You're walking toward the old barn just before sunset. The air has that late-day mix of warm straw and cool earth. Somewhere inside, the boards creak as if they're stretching after a long day. You can hear the final sounds of work mode fading, feeding time done, routine settling, the whole place quieting down for the night.
The light is turning amber. Dust hangs in the doorway like it's floating on purpose. Farmer Brain, 65 years old, weathered cap, hands that look like they've spent their whole lives gripping tools, doesn't hurry. He doesn't stomp. He doesn't announce himself. He just moves like someone who knows what's inside before he even looks. Because that barn has a rhythm, the horses have been fed, the chickens are deciding where they'll roost, feed sacks sit stacked, holding today's money in a way only farm families really understand. And that's when you open the barn door, and there it is. A long black snake stretched across the floor, as calm as a shadow that got tired of following the sun. Most people would freeze. Some would jump back hard enough to knock the door frame. Others would already be thinking about a shovel, a broom, a gun, anything to make the problem go away. But Farmer Brain doesn't do any of that. He tips his hat. He looks at the snake like it's a part of the barn's furniture, like the ladder or the trough. Then he steps around it. No drama, no panic, no trying to prove he's brave. He just lets the snake keep doing whatever it's doing. And for a lot of outsiders, that makes absolutely no sense. They think, wait, why would you allow something like that near your home, your family, your animals? They hear snake and automatically translate it to threat. Farmer Brain seems to hear a different word instead. He hears helper. He hears balance. He hears part of how this place survives. Long before pest control companies showed up with branded trucks. Long before poison bait became the default answer. Long before modern traps made it feel like you could solve everything with equipment and a checklist, farmers already understood one of the oldest secrets of American farm life. Not all snakes are out to cause trouble, and black snakes in particular were often one of the smartest allies a farm could have. Because the real enemy on a farm isn't always a big animal you can see. A farm's enemy is often small, sneaky, patient. A mouse can get through a tiny hole like it was built for that purpose. A rat can squeeze under a door gap like it's learned the exact measurements. They chew through sacks, they ruin grain, they damage wood, they spread disease, and worst of all, they don't just take a little, they can build a whole problem that grows quietly for weeks. If you've never lived with storage grain, it's hard to feel how serious this is. But to a farmer, that grain isn't just food. It's money, it's winter planning, it's security. To a mouse, a barn full of feed is paradise. And when the rodents are thriving, everything suffers. Livestock gets nervous, nesting spots get messed up, feed costs climb, and families spend their days chasing something they can't fully catch. Cats help, sure. Owls help too. Barn swallows help by eating insects. Humans do what humans do. They watch, they clean, they patch holes, they try again tomorrow. But there was always another hunter working quietly in the background. The black snake. Farmer Brain will tell you, in his own calm way, that a black snake's value isn't just that it eats mice, it's that it can reach where people can't. Unlike a lot of rodents' enemies, a black snake is a strong climber. It can move through barns, across fences, into haylofts, and into spaces that are basically off limits for human hands and most tools. So it doesn't just hang out where it's easy to notice, it goes where the mice go. Wherever mice hide, a black snake often follows. That's the part that made old farmers start paying attention. They didn't need a laboratory, they needed a pattern. You'd hear stories like this again and again. Barns with a healthy black snake presence tended to have fewer rodents, less grain mysteriously vanishing, fewer nests appearing in hay bales, less mess under feed storage, less frantic livestock.
Less of that sinking feeling that the barn is slowly getting eaten from the inside. And once you see a pattern like that, you don't forget it. Farmer Brain learned it the way many rural people learn things, through the slow accumulation of ordinary days and small discoveries. You don't always know the scientific reason at first. You know the result. Then you connect the dots. Over time, it became part of how kids grew up on farms. They learned the difference between the snakes that belonged outside and the snakes that belonged in the barn. Not every snake was welcome. Some were dangerous or just didn't match the farm's helper role. But black snakes earned respect because they reliably did useful work. Some farmers even gave them nicknames, something simple and familiar, the kind of name you'd use for a regular visitor who never causes harm. The point wasn't the word itself. The point was the relationship. A large black snake living near the barn might stay for years. The family would learn where it liked to hide. The snake would learn where the mice lived. It wasn't a friendship like people talk about in movies. It was an arrangement. Both sides benefited. The snake got steady food without human interference. The farm got a natural predator moving through its walls, rafters, and tucked away corners. So when you hear an old farmer say, "Leave him alone," it's not about loving reptiles. It's about recognizing a working partnership. And it doesn't end at mice. Farmer Brain will also tell you that black snakes hunt more than just the obvious targets. They may go after young rats. They may eat small birds. They may raid eggs. And sometimes they even hunt other snakes. That last part matters because it shows black snakes are part of a bigger system, not just a one-note rodent solution. You can think of it like this. When you reduce the rodents, you also reduce the cascade of problems rodents cause. Less rodent activity means fewer damaged sacks, fewer holes expanding into bigger problems, fewer frightened livestock moments, and fewer worries about disease. Old farmers didn't always fully understand every detail, like how often certain prey shows up, or exactly how snakes compete in specific areas. But the belief still held because it matched what they saw. Some farmers even noticed something else. Black snakes might help keep more dangerous snakes away. The idea was that black snakes compete for food and space, which could make the barn less attractive to venomous species. Even if the exact relationship varies from place to place, the overall keep the balance instinct was still grounded in what farms experienced on the ground. Now, let's talk about another reason farmers didn't panic: temperament. A lot of people imagine snakes as aggressive by default, but many black snakes, when left alone, prefer escape over confrontation. They don't typically chase people. They don't go looking to attack livestock. Most of the time, their first choice is simply to vanish into the shadows, into a crawl space, or up into the rafters where they feel safe. On a busy farm, that calm behavior changes everything. Children play outside, dogs move around the property, animals wander between chores. People aren't trying to live inside a cage of fear. They're living close to nature because that's what farm life requires. So a peaceful hunter is easier to live with than a dangerous one. Farmer Brain understands this without turning it into a lecture. He just treats it like practical knowledge. Every animal has a purpose. Cats hunt mice. Owls take rats. Swallows eat insects. Dogs help guard livestock. And black snakes patrol the barn. That's not romance. That's a working ecosystem. Modern science eventually caught up to a lot of what farmers learned through experience. Researchers could explain what farmers had observed for generations. Rodents damage crops and stored grain. Black snakes are effective predators. Healthy ecosystems can naturally reduce pest problems. The old wisdom wasn't random. It was based on real cause and effect, just discovered the slow way. And yet, Farmer Brain also emphasizes caution, because even helpful snakes deserve respect. Old farm culture didn't teach recklessness, it taught boundaries. Children learned not to handle unknown snakes. People learned that just because a snake looks like a garden snake doesn't mean it's safe. And just because one snake is harmless doesn't mean all snakes in the area are.
Knowing the difference between species wasn't just trivia, it was an accident prevention skill. Farmer Brain's message is simple and clear, the way only someone who's seen real life up close can make it sound. Leave them alone. Watch from a distance. Let the farm's helper do its job. That's what the hat tip means. It's not surrender, it's management. And for a while, this relationship worked well enough that black snakes could stay where they were useful. During colder months, food sources and shelter patterns shape animal movement. In warmer months, barns become even more attractive. The heat inside draws in small animals, rodents, birds seeking cover, and whatever else is looking for warmth and protection. That's often when a black snake's nighttime work really shows. During the night, it hunts. In the morning, the farmer simply notices fewer unwanted visitors. No dramatic confrontation, no chaotic chase. Just the quiet result of a predator doing predator things. So the next time you hear the phrase pest control, it might help to think broader than poison and traps. Farmers weren't choosing between nature and technology. They were choosing between short-term fixes and long-term stability. Letting black snakes live wasn't a sentimental choice. It was a strategy that fit the reality of the farm. And then the world changed. As America modernized, many old barns disappeared. Smaller family farms were replaced by larger buildings and different farming practices. Wild habitat shrunk in many areas. People became less familiar with the animals that used to be regular neighbors. The skill of noticing, identifying, and coexisting faded. When that happens, it's easy to lose the why behind old habits. So you end up with outsiders reacting to the same black snake in the same barn and still thinking, get rid of it immediately. Farmer Brain has seen that shift. He's seen how knowledge can vanish faster than a barn can fall apart. A tradition can fade even while the animals still exist. But across rural America, the tradition still flickers in place. Ask an old farmer about the big black snake that hangs around the barn. You might get a smile. You might get a story. And you'll probably get the same advice, repeated in different words, but with the same meaning. Leave him alone. He's earning his keep. That's the part that's easy to miss. This isn't a story about letting danger roam free. It's a story about people watching the natural world carefully enough to notice which creatures solve problems instead of causing them. It's about learning which animals belong near the home and which don't. It's about respect that comes from observation, not from fear. And when you stand in that barn, when the sunset light lands on hay bales, on the floorboards hold quiet dust, you can feel why this made sense to the people who lived it. The snake isn't there by accident. It's there because the barn offers food, shelter, and a path through the spaces rodents use. If you kick it out, the mice don't suddenly disappear. They just keep breeding. They just keep finding cracks, and then the barn becomes a constant battle. If you leave it alone, the snake keeps hunting. The farm stays steadier. The grain stays safer. The workday ends with fewer surprises. Farmer Brain doesn't pretend the relationship is perfect. He knows nature doesn't operate on human schedules. He knows weather changes everything. He knows sometimes people make mistakes and sometimes snakes get in the wrong spot. But he also knows this. A farm isn't just a building, it's a system. And in a system, one creature can make another creature's problem smaller. So when you see a large black snake crossing an old country road or slipping into a weathered barn, don't automatically treat it like a disaster. Pause, breathe, think of the balance. Think of the helper that works quietly in the dark. Then, if you're the kind of person who respects what you don't fully understand yet, tip your hat, step around the snake, and let the barn settle back into its evening calm. Because to many old American farmers, that wasn't a pest. It was one of the hardest working members of the farm. And somewhere in the countryside, Farmer Brain would just keep walking, letting the old hunter get back to work.